Good morning, YouTube. So plumber says you need a new sewer line. What does that entail? Well, in here I'll kind of show you what it looks like to replace a sewer line. I did a little additional work. I'll explain that more in a bit. But ultimately, I was called out to run a new line. So in this video, you'll see what a service plumber looks like replacing a sewer line. Okay, so on this job it's a little unique. I ended up being contracted out to run a sewer line and then an additional trench for some conduit, because let me get out of the frame here. What this customer wants to do is roughly in here they want to install a pool, right? So they didn't necessarily have to replace the sewer line as far as the function of the line itself, but we had to reroute it here to accommodate the new line. As you can see, they got a shop there, and originally this line came out here, went into a 45, and then the original line was actually 8 foot deep. You'll see in the video as I trench this thing out, but it all started with running this conduit line here. The electrical guys have been working on that, so that's their stuff. Anyways, this is a little more elaborate than your average sewer line, but really it's just running two different trenches. Anyways, stick around and I'll break down what I did, why I did it, and you can see how. So for this particular job, I had to dig 9 foot down to get to the city riser, which that's where your sewer line connects into the city sewer, so it's a little further back. But that's what they tied onto with the original line, which was 4-inch clay, very common on older homes. But we went back with Schedule 40 PVC. It's what we use in Oklahoma. But just for reference, so I stand 6 foot tall, and there's still 3 more feet. So if you're thinking about digging up your sewer line, if you've got a deep city main, that is something that should be left to professionals. It does get a little dangerous once you start going this deep on occasion, but this is what a whole new PVC line looks like. So what makes a good sewer line is just having fall. You don't really need much, but in this case we got a 70-foot sewer line. Over a developed length, it can be a little tricky to accomplish, but on my level here, if you can see, should say 1/8 of an inch. Where I'm at, that's code minimum. Really, nationally, that's about the minimum for a 3 to 4 inch line. Now, in my state, if it was a 2-inch line, I would have to get 1/8, which that's even more fall. But 1/8 is a minimum. We've got at least that going the whole developed length. And let me walk it out. It's a 3/8 conduit line I trenched out. Did not lay the conduit. I laid the PVC. But I did trench it as well, as you saw in the video, or will see. So along this whole developed length, I can stick this level anywhere on it. Oh, got it reversed. And again, it shows an 1/8 inch. Let's hit it here. We got a 1/4 there, so that's even better. About a 1/4 there as well. So we got good fall going all the way down. That's very important for a sewer line. Otherwise, you're just gonna have problems forever. Okay, so as of right now, my sewer line is complete. When it comes to the conduit, the guy said just leave them a few feet. So as you can see, that's all backfilled, tamped back down. And then for OG&E, they also requested I leave them open at the end there, so eventually they can tie into this line. They originally had an overhead line going to the house. If you're gonna have a pool, not really a great situation, so that's what the conduit's for, so they can run their underground wire. But otherwise, my stuff is backfilled. That 9-foot hole is now about a 3-footer. They can do whatever they need to do. They can also backfill the rest of their stuff, but that in essence is what all it takes to replace your sewer line. Now, as I said earlier in the video, we had a 9-foot hole here. Now, on occasion, I do have customers ask me, hey, can I replace my own sewer line? It's your property, man, I don't really care. But in this case, city main's about 11 foot deep. Anytime really you go below 3 foot, it can get a little sketchy, especially depending on your soil types, right? Here in Oklahoma, we have a lot of clay. That's mostly what this is. So as you saw, man, it was a relatively stable hole, but really, technically, you should use shoring and something like that. You shouldn't be attempting it anyways, really, as a homeowner. This is something that's very dangerous. There's 2 places plumbers die. That's in crawl spaces and deep holes for cave-ins. So anyways, make sure you use licensed guys when you do a project like this. This is a project. Overall, this job ended up taking a week in man hours, and I did have help throughout some of it. Hopefully I have some footage of us digging the deep hole. That's probably more so interesting than that, but came out perfect, so I can't complain. It was a good job.